So we have almost 100 participants here, so it will be a very noisy if all mics are on. Okay, Auleep, over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Munir, for the kind words and for saying that I'm able to manage my time, both being focused and having fun. Dr. Munir actually had been very helpful in my entire process as well of moving to the UK. Would not have been able to do it without him, as well as the help of all the other IMU lecturers. Right, okay, I'm gonna attempt to share my screen. If there are any issues, please let me know. And if someone can't see it, also let me know. Right. Now, can everyone see this? Is it all okay?
Yes, Auleep.
Yep.
Seen.
Fantastic. Right, so let's begin. So first of all, thank you everyone for your time in attending this webinar. My name is Auleep, and as mentioned earlier, I'm currently living and working in Scotland. I graduated with the DT 111 batch in 2016. I will be sharing bits and pieces about my journey today, but I don't want to just talk about me. My main aim is to provide value to everyone who has attended and taken time off to attend this conference. So what I'll be doing is, while I'm sharing my journey, I want to also provide value. A couple of things I want to get across to everyone actually viewing this webinar. First of all, I want to help people understand that even though you may graduate from a certain country, for example, whether you graduate from Singapore or Malaysia or Thailand, you don't necessarily have to work and continue working in that nation until the end of your career. There are possibilities to move beyond that and work overseas as well. So what I'm going to be doing is trying and helping everyone understand the process of moving overseas and how you can transfer the skills you spent 5, 6, 7, 8 years learning overseas. You'll also be able to walk a little bit of a different path to your classmates, and it may even help you explore different parts of the world. Again, it is very exciting to work beyond the shores of the country you graduated in, but they do come with advantages and disadvantages just like anything else. But let's start at the very beginning. Now, why did I choose IMU in the first place? I'd come by IMU in 2010, and I was very...
APMB recommend APMB Afin và smart.
Sorry guys, if everyone could mute their mic, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So I was very impressed with the modern facilities of the clinic and the dental skills lab. Everything looked absolutely tip-top. The IMU curriculum also was quite up to date in terms of the fact that even the examination structure, they had OBAs and OSCEs instead of the regular essay questions. This actually came in handy during my examination process, and you will see why that is a little bit down the road. IMU also provides all of us very early clinical exposure. I believe the dental program starts exposing students to patients sometime in the end of the first year. And I spoke about the modern exam structure a short while ago as well. Now, all of you will have a similar experience of being in IMU with your classmates and your batchmates. Now, this is a fantastic opportunity. Anyone who is still a student at IMU, enjoy this time with your classmates and your friends. These will be your future colleagues. This is an incredibly opportune time to network, to make friends, and to build friendships which will last a lifetime, and make memories which will also last a lifetime. So as Dr. Munir mentioned, we did work hard, played hard, and had a fantastic time as well. Now, this photo on the top is a picture of us on a holiday with my batchmates in IMU. I encourage everyone to try and explore different boundaries. Again, this is a fantastic opportunity for you to spend time exploring parts of the world with your friends. So make that effort, plan something with your friends, and it will again make you fantastic memories. studying again is not everything. Sports is something that I really enjoyed as well. It enables you to make friends with people in different batches. That's a nursing student over there, medical, and the rest of us are from dentistry. So again, sports builds bridges and helps you connect with people from different backgrounds, different races, different religions. And it's something that people should definitely be involved in. Right, now giving back to the community again is extremely important. IMU has always been very supportive of CSR projects, giving back to the less fortunate. This was something I did in conjunction with my batchmates, where we went to a local madrasa and helped people out. Again, IMU Cares provides a fantastic platform. This was my father's home. Many of us will be aware of this, and I urge everyone to try and use IMU's structure to help people out. Five years down the road, this was us. I'm sure many of you are actually waiting for this moment. Trust me when I say this moment when you hold that BDS scroll in your hand is worth all the effort you put in. And of course, I'm fortunate enough that IMU recognizes the efforts of students outside academia and the classroom. And just award students who are doing what they can beyond the confines of the classroom. The Flame Award was something which was for giving back to society, and this was the Best Student Clinician Award, which was awarded again, as Dr. Munir mentioned. Right, now moving on to life beyond IMU. I graduated in 2016, completed my compulsory service with the Malaysian government at UKM in 2017, and then moved to the UK sometime last year, where I also completed my MFDS. Now, what we will be focusing on is this bit in between my graduation and my government service, where I had a little bit of time in between these two jobs that I had. Now, I chose to actually go through some qualifying exams to work overseas. Many of my classmates chose to use the time in between graduation and their first job to work as dental assistants. Some people worked as baristas, others followed their hobbies and their passions. There's no right or wrong. So it's important to know what you would like to do at the period of graduation, so you do not waste any time in between finishing your degree and getting a new job. Now, moving on to why everyone is here today, licensing yourself to work overseas. Now, every country you go to will have a different procedure for allowing overseas dentists to work in them. Whether it's Australia, Singapore, USA, or the UK, most countries have a sort of structure which you have to go through and examinations that you have to take to be able to work in that country. Now, some countries like the USA, they actually require you to go back to university and recomplete the final years of dental school before you are able to actually work there as an independent dentist. Some of the common countries in which the licensing exams are popular are Australia, for example, Canada, Singapore, America, and of course, we will be focused heavily on the structure to work in the UK. I'm just going to be giving everyone a brief overview of the different processes to work in various countries before focusing heavily on the actual structure of working in the UK. The Australian Dental Council exam, I think, is held 3 times a year. It can be quite competitive to get seats for it, and it consists of a single theory paper and a practical paper where you have a mannequin as well as an OSCE style exam. If you would like to work further overseas, Canada also has a setup. The Canadian setup actually allows you to work in New Zealand as well. So if you were to pass this exam, which consists of 2 theory papers and 1 practical paper, you can work both in Canada and New Zealand. Also, something interesting is if you're able to work in Australia and you have a dental license in Australia, you can work in New Zealand and vice versa. In America, it's a little bit different. What you have to do is you have to pass their national dental board exams. Once you do that, you actually have to apply to attend what they call the advanced standing dental programs. This is a 2-year full-time course where you pay a fee and you join university and you join the local 3rd and 4th year dental students to complete the actual DDS degree over there. In Singapore, if you would like to move down south, a couple of criteria you have to satisfy is that you need to be a Singaporean citizen or a PR, or married to one, or the child of one. It consists of 2 theory papers and 1 practical paper. Our main focus today will be on the UK. It's called the Overseas Registration Examination. I will be going through the preparation, the actual examination, and the results structure as well. So what I'll be doing is I'll be first talking to you guys about how to prepare and get yourselves ready for the exam and the actual process of it, and then taking you through the journey that a typical student going through the exam would be taking. First of all, preparation. Now, I mentioned earlier that Dr. Munir and the IMU lecturers were very, very helpful. I remember pestering Dr. Munir for about a period of 3 to 4 months to every single day to get me some sort of document to sit for this exam, some sort of document to sit for that exam, and he was extremely helpful and extremely kind all throughout. There will be a few things you need to get prepared before you are even able to apply for the exam. First of all, the application form, that's pretty straightforward. You would need an English language certificate as well. This could be either an IELTS, or if you've graduated recently from a course where they teach you in English, that would be fine as well. The third thing you would need is what they call an NARIC statement of compatibility. This is something you apply for online. It takes between 2 weeks to a month to get back to you. You would need a few documents from IMU, including a character reference from the dean, as well as a few documentations detailing exactly what kind of work you did as a student in IMU. And you'll need a document from the Malaysian Dental Council. And if you're registered with any other dental council overseas, you will need a certificate of good standing from them as well. I would say give yourself at least a couple of months to complete this process. So start early, don't delay if you plan to move overseas sometime soon. What I did mention earlier was I had plenty of help from the IMU staff, so make sure that you approach your lecturers and they will be absolutely delighted to be able to help you. Let's take a look at the Part 1 examination. Now, the exam fees themselves currently, and this does tend to go up every single year, is about £806. The Part 1 is fully computer-based, and you have 4 attempts for this part. What I did mention earlier about IMU preparing you well for these exams, you can see why. OBAs and EMQs are the chosen types of questions that they ask you in this exam. Now, if you have spent 5 years in that IMU structure, going through the OBAs and doing EMQs, it makes a massive difference to someone going in and seeing these questions for the first time. There are 2 basic papers. Paper A covers basic sciences and paper B covers clinical dentistry. Let's take a look at a sample question. This is taken directly from the official website. So this will be the sort of question that you see very, very often in the papers that you sit for. For example, this question talks about a 13-year-old girl who has a congenitally missing lateral incisor. It's a straightforward question. Now, the issue with this is that the answers they give you, more than one may be correct. It says that her other teeth are not restored. What would be the best clinical decision to take in terms of how you can replace this tooth? So if you take a look, none of the answers are 100% wrong, but the minimal preparation bridge, the one which is highlighted, is the most conservative one and would probably be the correct clinical decision to make. So it's about choosing the most correct answers from multiple answers which could be correct. Part two is for me, the bigger part of the exam and the bigger hurdle. Currently, the cost is about £3,000 per sitting. You are allowed 4 attempts. Again, you have to pay the entire £3,000 cost if you fail, and you have to sit for a second attempt. It consists of 4 parts: the OSCE, a dental treatment planning exercise, a medical emergency section, as well as a mannequin section. I will be going through each of these 4 sections one at a time to describe exactly what the process would be like. Now, the OSCE, essentially what they do is they bring you into a corridor which has about 20 rooms. You have 5 minutes per room to complete each OSCE station. There will be 20 stations, and the OSCEs are split into 3 different types of OSCEs. You could have actor OSCEs, where they could ask you to walk into a room. The room is going to have a simulated patient. It will also have an examiner. You are essentially advised to ignore the examiner and just speak to the actor. An example of an actor OSCE would be something along the lines of, this patient has been having aphthous ulcers. Take a history and explain exactly what aphthous ulcers are to the patient. The other type of OSCE which you may have to complete during this examination would be a written OSCE, where they ask you to write either a referral or a prescription, or perhaps the report of an X-ray. Finally, you have skilled OSCEs, where they ask you to do relatively simple clinical tasks. For example, they may ask you to suture something, or they may ask you to take an X-ray or place a rubber dam on a single tooth. This is a sample question, again, taken from the official website. So in this one, you have a lady being referred to you for an extraction of a grossly broken down lower left 6. What you have to do is obtain consent for the extraction under local anesthetic. This would be an example of the marking scheme that the examiners have, and how they will mark what you said and how you are doing, and whether you pass or fail would all be based on this examination scheme. Now, I want to bring your attention to a couple of things. If you look at all these points, take a look at the ones I'm highlighting. The candidate introduces himself to the patient. The candidate uses appropriate language, which means don't use any dental terms. You may want to use the words taking out your tooth instead of extraction. The candidate, and then they ask the actor who is playing the patient in this OSCE, did the candidate establish a sympathetic relationship with you? And did you feel that you understood the information given? Now, what's common amongst all of these things I've circled? What's common is that you don't essentially need to know anything about the actual case. This is all about communication, communication, and communication. Now, speaking to patients in a clear and caring manner, this is something which the UK places an extremely high emphasis on. I cannot emphasize this enough. Practice, if you are an IMU or if you're working in a clinic, practice your communication. Practice speaking to your patients in a way that is empathetic, which is caring. And if you were to do that, this will really prepare you well for the exam if you were to sit for it. Now, this is the slightly complex bit of the examination. This is a dental treatment planning exercise. Essentially, what they're testing in this case is how good you are at seeing a patient, taking the necessary radiographs or the pulp tests or the tests that you need to do to get the information you need, and then coming up with a treatment plan and then explaining that plan to the patient. They actually want you to take that patient from the first visit all the way to the complete planning stage, and then explaining the plan to the patient as well. So it is a little bit difficult to explain via slides. What happens is when you walk into the room, on the table, there will be a few photos and perhaps the primary diagnostic casts of the patient, along with the simulated patient himself. Now, what you have to do is get a proper history from the patient. This includes your social history, your dental history, your medical history, the chief complaint, and all of that. Then with that information, just the CAS and the photos and the history, you need to come up with a few provisional diagnoses. So for example, if the patient you think has an abscess, it could be either a perioabscess or it could be an endoabscess. You don't know yet. The next bit of the exam is where they tell you the results of the special investigations. These could be things like the pulp test or perio charting, which will help you to narrow down your provisional diagnosis into a final diagnosis. They'll give you an X-ray on which you have to write a report. Based on that report and the diagnosis, you have to come up with a final plan. And then once you have that plan, communicate it to the patient. Now they will mark you on everything from the history taking to the diagnosis to the way you communicate the plan to the patient to your body language. Everything actually contributes marks. This is a sample question. So when you walk in again, you will be given these photos. Obviously, you can see the dentition is quite broken down, quite worn away. The patient will tell you that they are concerned about the way the teeth look. Then they will give you the information. They'll give you the BPE. They'll give you the hygiene. They'll give you the occlusion. They'll give you the periodontal status, and they'll give you these CAS. Now, what's important is they also want clinicians coming to the UK to know when it's appropriate to refer. So if you feel like this case is beyond your capabilities, telling the patient that I would like to refer you over to a specialist is absolutely correct. They don't want you to bite off more than you can chew. These are the forms you need to fill up. That's the history form. That's the form in which you write your provisional diagnosis. And of course, this would be the form in which you present your final treatment plan. Again, the UK really is looking for dentists who can communicate well, who are well-rounded individuals, and who can perform the act of communicating what you want to do to the patient really well. So you will be marked on everything from the moment you walk into the room to the moment you leave. The more clinical work you do, the easier this gets. The third part of the examination is the medical emergencies. Now, this is split into two bits. You have the viva. You walk into a room and there will be two examiners across the table from you. You sit down and they will ask you a few questions as to what you would do in certain medical emergencies. For example, they may tell you that you are doing a root canal. On a lower left 6, the patient starts gasping for air and having difficulty breathing. What are the things which could possibly be happening? So that could be anything from an asthmatic attack to an allergic reaction to just simple hyperventilation. Then they will go ahead and ask you, okay, you think it's an asthmatic attack. What are some of the clinical signs and symptoms of an asthmatic attack? And then they may have a spacer device on the table in front of you, and they will ask you to pick up that device and show them how you would use it on the patient. Now, if you were to be able to pass this viva, you will then have a CPR test on a dummy. Now, they want you to do everything from calling for help to actually doing the actual CPR to calling the ambulance. So what happens in this scenario is that if you're waiting for your turn to go into the room, you will be sitting outside the room while the person ahead of you is doing the CPR inside the room with the door closed. So you could be sitting there, and all of a sudden, as the person is starting the CPR, you will hear them shouting for help from inside. You are already quite nervous, and hearing that makes you feel extremely on edge as well. To pass this exam, I would recommend memorizing this Resuscitation Council guidelines from cover to cover. If you are able to do that, you should be okay in passing this bit of the exam. Right, moving on to the Mannequin Test. This, I would say, is the most difficult part of the entire examination, and probably the part where most candidates tend to trip up. What they will do is they will give you 3 exercises to complete. you have 2 major exercises. Now, a major exercise can be something like a preparation of a crown, or it could be a class 2 amalgam on an upper tooth. That includes the preparation and the filling. Or it could be a root canal where you do a shaping and cleaning and an obturation on a plastic tooth kept in front of you. And that would be followed by a minor exercise. Now, you can choose to do the minor one first or the 2 major ones first. It really doesn't matter. A minor exercise will be something along the lines of a temporary crown placement, or perhaps taking an impression or placing a rubber dam. You have a total of 3 hours for this. They will mark you not just on the final product, but on also how you sit. You cannot sit there, hunch over, and stick your head into the patient's mouth. If you do that, they will warn you once, and if after their first warning you still continue to do that, they will actually deduct points from you. So they look at everything from ergonomics to infection. Nazir, could you turn off your mic, please, Nazir? They'll look at everything from ergonomics to infection control. So you have to be making sure you're wearing your gloves, your visor, or at least some sort of eye shield, as well as the final product, where they will take a look at the tooth and take a look at what you've prepared. Now, the fantastic bit about the UK exam, I would say, is that there are very, very clear guidelines. This would be the guidelines that they give you for example, for a class 2 for an amalgam on an upper tooth. They want to make sure you have a sufficient depth to it for 2 millimeters. And for example, they will ask you to place a calcium hydroxide lining, and they want to make sure you place it in the correct area. They will also tell you what not to do. So they don't want you to make it too shallow or too deep. And they don't want the lining to be uneven or messy. Now, these things are clearly laid out in the guidelines, but knowing what they're saying and then actually putting it into practice during the examination are 2 different things. So a quick snapshot of the entire application process and the process of actually working in the UK from overseas. You do the application with the documentation, you pass the exams, you actually have to pay the indemnity and the annual fee to be able to register yourself with the dental council. Now, something you guys should be aware of, if say, for example, you pass the exam in June and you want to join the GDC in July, the actual annual fee will not be reduced. Currently, the annual fee is about £600. So whether you join the GDC register in January or in December, you will still be paying £600. So many people choose to pass the exam, wait till early next year, till January, and then pay that actual annual fee. Finally, after all that is completed, after you've done the required paperwork, then you can register with the GDC. Now, just to take you through my experience of the exam, of course, I flew down to the UK for my part 1. Now, this is something I want to emphasize. Please don't do what I did. Make sure you plan early. Because of certain reasons I won't get into, what happened was my flight landed at 6:25 in the morning. And on the same morning, the very same morning that I landed, my exam was at 9 o'clock. Basically, what that meant was I had to pray that my flight wasn't delayed. I had to land. I had to get through Heathrow border control. And if anyone has ever been to London, you know that Heathrow border control can have enormous queues. After I passed through border control, I had to take a train all the way to King's College where my examination was held. Fortunately, the plane landed on time. I managed to get through border control without too much hassle, and I managed to get to the exam venue with about half an hour to spare. So please don't be like me. Please plan ahead and make sure you arrive at least a couple of days early, especially if you're coming from Asia, because you would want to get rid of the jet lag that you may be having. So part 1 result, I was fine. I managed to pass. A couple of things I would like to identify is, I think those of you who are in IMU, the examination structure, again, I'm mentioning this, the OBAs and the EMQs really, really help. Of course, if you have done your MFDS part 1, the types of questions they ask in that part 1 are quite similar to what they ask in the ORE part 1. Now, part 2, this you guys may recognize this building. This is basically Eastman Dental Institute. We have a couple of alumni teaching at IMU from Eastman. Prof. Xiao, Prof. Allen, Prof. To used to be teaching as well. They are all alumni of Eastman. Now, part 2, the examination, I had gone in, and the 4 or 5 days I was there, it was extremely stressful. I remember it flew by like in a blur, like in just a flash, and I had no idea where the time had gone. On the last day of the exam, which was the mannequin test, I finished the exam and I was like, look, right, I need to take some time off and relax. So if any of you know me, you will know that I'm a massive football fan and a big Arsenal fan. This was my first time in the Arsenal Stadium in London. This was about 20 minutes from the exam venue. I literally finished my exam, hopped in a taxi, and arrived just in time for this game, where I watched Arsenal beat Chelsea 3-0.
Up against blue shirts.
My whole point of showing you this is that I want you guys to enjoy the journey. Yes, it will be tough in certain bits, but if you don't enjoy the process becomes a lot more difficult. Now, I remember seeing this goal. It went in right in front of me, and the entire crowd erupted with joy all around me. It was absolutely fantastic. However, I came back home, and after about 2 weeks, I got this. I unfortunately had not been able to pass the examination. And I'll be honest with you, I was absolutely devastated. I was disappointed. I felt like I would never be able to work in the UK. I felt like I did not have enough knowledge. I did not have enough training. I felt all of those emotions. But I think an important lesson that I've learned in my journey is that it's not really about avoiding failure. It's about how you respond to failure. It's impossible to go through these things, whether it's examinations or whether it's just a difficult period in your life, without having setbacks. Very, very few people, only perhaps the geniuses or the very, very fortunate, will be actually able to complete this process without having any setbacks, without experiencing failure. It's not about avoiding failure. Again, it's about how you respond to failure. So I did feel all those emotions. I felt disappointed, sad. I hated, I hated what I was doing. But I gave myself a couple of weeks, and I told myself, look, it's time for you to get a grip on yourself, and it's time to do something about it. Let's give the exam one more shot to make sure that we do our very, very best to pass the next time around. So I went back, and what I did was I practiced. So I would like you guys to meet Sir Lancelot. That is Sir Lancelot. It's the mannequin I bought for my home. This is actually my computer room at home. Now, I practice at home. I also practiced at the IMU labs. So initially, when I spoke to the dean, she said, no problem. I'm happy to let you practice in the lab. And I spent about 5 weeks practicing about 8 hours a day, from 9 a.m. in the morning to 5 p.m. in the evening. And this was at a time where I had already finished my degree. I had graduated, and I was still in the dental skills lab downstairs practicing. Some of you may have seen me down there. And I spent all that time practicing for about 2 months in the IMU lab, and then further practice at home as well. I also went for a couple of preparation courses in the UK, where you fly down. They spend 4 to 5 days teaching you how to do the mannequin exercises properly. These, I would say, are very, very important. In my personal opinion, without going for these courses, it is very, very difficult to pass, because the people teaching these courses know exactly what the examiners are looking for, and they'll tell you exactly what you're doing incorrectly and what you're doing correctly. So I practice at home. I made a puddle of water on the floor every single day. And I think those floorboards are completely wrecked now, but I practiced more and more and more. I must have cut at least 200 to 300 teeth, all sorts of things. My class 1 cavities, class 2 cavities, composite buildups, class 3s, root canals. It's just about putting yourself through that grind and making sure you practice, practice, and practice even more. And what was the final result? I flew back to the UK after about 3-4 months, sat for the exam, and I got this. We are pleased to inform you that you were successful in part 2 of the ORE. Success. Now, this was absolutely fantastic. Again, it made the entire process, the setbacks I had faced, the traveling back and forth, the courses I had to go through, worth it. It was an incredible feeling, but this was not easy. It did not come without setbacks. So that was my journey. I passed the exam in about 2018, and then I moved to the UK in early 2019. This photo was taken by me. It's a place in Scotland called Stonehaven. It was a beautiful summer day, and there was this old couple, very sweet, sitting there overlooking the harbour. This is one of the best experiences I've had in the UK. But what is it like working in the UK? Right. First of all, for those who want to move there, you do realize that you would need a work visa. Now, unless you are a UK citizen, this would apply to you. With Brexit just happening recently, we are not really sure what's going to happen to European Union citizens. But I think what's going to happen is they would probably need a visa themselves as well. So it may be a little bit easier to get a visa now than it was maybe about 5-6 months ago. You will need what they call a performer number. Now, just like in Malaysia, when you graduate, you have to complete a year of government service. Similarly to that, when you work in the UK, your first year of working in the UK, you have to be supervised by someone who has been working on the NHS for a while. Most clinics are a mixture of an NHS clinic and a private clinic. I'll explain exactly the differences shortly. Basically, what the NHS does is it provides basic dental care, but patients can sometimes opt to go for private care as well. For example, if a patient comes in and needs a filling on a lower left 6, you can provide them with an amalgam on the lower left 6 as it's a back tooth, and that would be on the NHS, no problem. But if the patient does not want an amalgam and they want a composite instead, that can only be done privately. So for example, on the NHS back teeth, you cannot provide composites, but you can do it privately. Now, there are fully private clinics in the UK as well. The advantage of working in private clinics is that, of course, the remuneration, the amount of money you make per procedure is more. But competition for jobs in private clinics can be quite high. So finding a private clinic where they will be willing to give you a work visa for someone who is not from the UK can be extremely difficult. The NHS, while the UK is one single country, the NHS system in England is different from Wales, which is different from Ireland, which is different from Scotland. Now, in England, they carry out a system called a unit of dental activity, or a UDA system. What that does is, say, for example, a patient comes in, you do a root canal, that is worth about 3 UDAs. One important bit is you can only charge one type of UDA per plan, and I'll explain exactly what this means shortly. I'm in Scotland, however, and in Scotland, we practice what they call a fee per item system, where, for example, you do a certain procedure and you get a fixed fee. For example, currently, a molar root canal is about £120 for the practitioner and the clinic. Now, why does that make a difference? Okay, take, for example, you have 2 patients coming into your practice. One patient needs a single root canal and one patient needs 2 root canals. This patient, once you've completed this root canal on the lower right 6, in England, for example, you'd be paid 3 UDAs, which is about £75. In Scotland, you'll get £120. If another patient walks in, and for the same patient, you need to do 2 root canals, so double the effort, double the time, double the materials, double the effort. Despite that, in England, because you can only charge one type of UDA per plan, you still get the exact same amount of £75 as you would if you had just done a single root canal. But in Scotland, you get exactly double of that, which is why, for me personally, I do feel that Scotland seems to have a fairer system. Now, my job in Scotland was not, I did not apply to the UK thinking that I just want to work in Scotland and not England. what happened was I managed to get a job offer, and it was in a suitable place and a suitable location, which is why I ended up in Scotland. What I'm trying to emphasize is that the systems are different, so please know what you're getting into before actually moving over. Now, working in Scotland, this would be the example of one of the difficulties of working here. The Scottish English can be really quite difficult to understand sometimes. This is what the chief complaint of someone who has broken their tooth in Scottish would look like. Again, it's a matter of practice. If someone were to come to Malaysia and not know what the Malaysian English sounds like, it's just a matter of time before they're able to understand it. It did take me about 5-6 months to understand what, for example, Bonnie meant. Bonnie means nice or beautiful teeth. A wee chippy, for example, means a small chip. And doing Mahidin basically means it's been bothering me a lot. Every part of Scotland has a different accent. Probably the people with the strongest accents are the people from Glasgow. If you want to speak to someone from Glasgow, you had better give them 100% of your attention, or you will not be able to understand a single thing that they say. This is my current practice. We are based just outside of Aberdeen. We have 4 dentists, 3 surgeries. I currently work about 38 hours a week, and I'm working from Monday to Friday. No, the clinic is shut on weekends. This is what an average day looks like for me. Of course, for the time being, we are not working. All clinics in Scotland and the UK are shut. You see, we have everything from emergency pain to root canals to perio treatment to scale and polishes and crown preps. Again, you may notice that there's a lack of time. I think one of the important things you need to know is you need to decide what type of dentist you want to be and what sort of work you want to provide and what your professional values are. There's nothing wrong with being a dentist who wants to do things quickly and get things done properly, but you should stick to your values. If you know that you want to take your time with your work, do that, but you also have to be cognizant of the fact that you may be working in an environment where you may not be allowed to do that 100%. So know what type of dentistry you want to do, know that early and stick to your values. Couple of advantages of working in Scotland over Malaysia. Again, this is my personal experience, so please take this in that context. I find the work-life balance to be better in Scotland because you finish at a certain time and you don't work beyond that. There are plenty of rules protecting employees in Scotland. The work culture I find is a bit more equitable, where you and your boss and your management team are all considered to be equal. Higher number of patients, of course, higher experience. I've learned so much in the past 1 year, in an incredible amount. I found that in Scotland, because NHS prices are fixed, there's no sort of bargaining of any sort, and government support, for example, in the current COVID-19 situation has been fantastic in Scotland. Of course, Malaysia has a few advantages as well. In Malaysia, you're kind of not tied by the NHS system, so your choice of treatment is quite flexible. Charges, you can charge whatever it is that you'd like to whichever patient you'd like. There's a lack of red tape, which basically means a lack of legal requirements to be able to work and practice. And there's less amounts of administrative work compared to the UK. Just a couple of photos. This is me. I managed to travel to Belgium, to Tomorrowland. That's my fiance and I in the Czech Republic. A gift from a lovely patient. This was our annual work Christmas party, and a few friends I've made along the way. Now, one very important thing I wanted to share with all of you, one of the highlights of my time in Scotland was me proposing to my then girlfriend, now fiance. This was on a beautiful lake in the middle, on an island in the middle of a beautiful lake on a lovely summer day in Scotland. Now, having said that, home will always be home. I miss my family and I miss all this lovely Malaysian food back home. Fish and chips is no comparison to food back home. Takeaway messages, a few things I would like to emphasize. Failure is, again, a step to success, not the opposite of success. It's important to know your values and stick to them. And finally, practice, practice, and practice. the more you sweat, the luckier you get. That's a quote by Ray Kroc, the person who franchised and made McDonald's into the corporation that it is today. Right, of course, we will be asking you we'll be giving you the chance to ask a few questions, but if there's anything else you'd like to ask, please do give me a follow on social media and send me a message or send me an email. Take this information down, and if there's anything at all you'd like to ask me, please ask me at any time. I'm happy to help out as many people as needs to be. We will be asking you for a quick amount of feedback. So if possible, please do scan this in with a QR code scanner, and please provide the Alumni Association with the feedback that they need. I'm going to leave this slide on for a few seconds so you guys can scan this in and provide what needs to be done. Once again, thank you very much for joining us today. This talk is in collaboration with the IMU alumni offices. We will be taking your questions and I'll try and answer as many as possible. But again, if there are any questions that I'm not able to get around to, please do contact me on the previously mentioned email address or on my social media. Any feedback or any questions, please contact the alumni office at these details. And that would be that from me for today.
Okay, thank you so much. I think most of the listener or participant now, they would benefit a lot from this. You have covered a lot of things in a very short time. And I'm just opening the chat box if they can ask, if they have any questions. So there's one question, Dr. Auleep, can we foreign dentists set our own practices in UK, or we only limit to work as an employee?
Right, so you can set up your own practice in the UK, but that is subject to visa restrictions. If you are a UK citizen or a UK permanent resident, say for example, your parents are British and you've moved to Malaysia, you've graduated from Malaysia, you complete your ORE and come back. When you are in the UK, you have the permanent right to stay and work there. Then you can open up your own practice. But if you are on a work visa, you have to work for the employer who has provided you with the visa. So it's not really a matter of what examination you've done. It's about whether you can operate and own a business, and that is subject to the immigration laws. As long as you have the ability to stay and work in the UK, whether that's by being a citizen, by being the son or daughter of a citizen, or by being a PR, there are no restrictions to you actually owning and operating a clinic. Does that answer the question?
Sean has asked this question.
Perfect. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like to ask me.
Okay, Auleep, there's another question from Jan Yang. Do you know any country that we can work as a dentist without going through a licensing examination?
There are a few, but how do I put this? They won't be the countries that will be first on your list. Any country, for example, most people want to work in Australia, Canada, the States, UK. Those countries will require you to go through a licensing process. If, for example, you graduate from the UK, you can work in Australia. Or if you graduate from Canada, you can work in America. But with a Malaysian IMU degree, beyond the shores of Malaysia, there are very, very few countries which will allow you to work without an exam. And these countries, the ones which do let you work without an exam, I would say they won't be the most popular destinations. There are smaller nations in parts of the world where most people will not want to move to. And of course, you still need to factor in the visa process and whether you'd be allowed to move there for work. So for the big countries, UK, USA, Canada, not really. Smaller countries, there are, I believe, countries like Madagascar or I believe Nigeria as well. You're able to work without sitting for an exam. But again, it's a matter of whether you'd like to work in these countries or not.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Auleep.
No worries, man. Don't call me Dr. Auleep.
Yeah, there's another question. It says, was it difficult for you to apply for jobs in the UK after the exam? What's the process like?
Okay, so in the UK, the two main barriers to a non-UK citizen applying for a job would be the visa, number one, and of course the examination. Now, if you pass the exam, the main barrier would be the visa. So it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be. If you're willing to move beyond the big cities, you will not get a job in London or in Glasgow and Edinburgh. But if you're happy to move to smaller cities, for example, where I am in Aberdeen, to Bristol, to Brighton, there are places where they are employers who are willing to sponsor your visa for you. Again, one thing you have to be aware of is when you go in with the visa, you would probably have an employment contract about 2 to 3 years. So the employer will sponsor you, but you will be with that job for about 3 years. For me, I applied from Malaysia in about a period of 3-4 months. I sent a lot of applications through, I have to say, but in a period of about 3-4 months, I got 15-20 interviews and about 2 or 3 job offers. I took my third one because the first couple of offers I felt were in places which were extremely remote. The process would basically be for you to sign up for these alerts. There are certain Facebook groups you can join. There are certain websites you can go to. For example, the British Dental Association website, they have a lot of job offers. Apply for jobs which sponsor what they call a Tier 2 visa. If the job is willing to sponsor a Tier 2 visa, you send your CV through. They will usually have an online Skype interview. And if they're happy with that, they will offer you the job. At this moment in time, UK is still short of dentists, and they are going to be even more short of dentists in the near future because of Brexit. So it would be a good time to apply. So it's not impossible. It just takes a little bit of time, maybe about 3-4 months before you're actually able to get everything sorted. Because once you even do get a job offer, the entire process of going through the visa and getting all that sorted takes a couple of months as well. So it would be better if you have a job locally while you're applying, so there's no rush for you to move over.
Okay. So there's another message, Auleep. How long did the entire process take to complete the exams, and after that, including application for jobs in the UK?
This varies. I would say it would take, for the examination itself, it would take realistically 1.5 to 2 years. From applying to sitting for the part 1 and the part 2, there are multiple things which could delay you. For example, if your documentation is not correct, they will send it back. Even once your documentation is correct and you've been approved, part 1, it can be difficult to get a place for. The exams can be quite competitive and there are a limited number of seats. Same for part 2. So you may want to sit for the exam, you may be ready, but you may not be able to get a seat. That process takes, I would say, about 1.5 to 2 years. Applying for a job, it depends. If you're happy to move anywhere in the UK, I would say within 3-4 months, you should be able to get a job. If you're a little bit more picky, I would say 6 to 8 months. But if you keep applying, you should be able to get a position somewhere. Like I said, UK is still lacking in dentists for the time being.
Okay, thank you, Auleep. There's another interesting question. Would graduating from Partner Dental School in the UK allow one to work immediately in the UK, or would one still have to go through ORE?
No, you will be able to work in the UK if you graduate from a Partner Dental School in the UK. I believe as well the visa wouldn't be a problem, because if you are on an educational visa in the UK, which is what they call a Tier 4, you have 2 years beyond your graduation date to work in the UK as well. So for example, if you finish your degree on the 1st of January 2020, you will not need to actually change your visa until the 1st of January 2022. So you have a couple of years to be able to work in the UK. So if you graduate from there, it's actually, you are more or less on the same level as a local UK graduate or a local UK citizen.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. And there's 2 more questions which I think I can combine. They want you to share why you decided to work in the UK, first thing. And the next one is, what's the prospect of specializing in the UK?
Okay, so why I decided to work in the UK, I have wanted to do my master's, and I always wanted to do my master's in the UK. So I thought, while I had a gap in between my graduation and my actual compulsory service in Malaysia, instead of spending the time not doing anything, I decided to sit for these exams to allow myself to work in the UK, and hopefully that would make the pathway to my master's a bit easier. That's the reason I moved over. The second question is, what are the prospects of applying to masters? Right now, if you are a local UK graduate or a local UK citizen, the application process for the masters is a little bit different. If you are a local UK graduate, they actually have what they call a dental core training, where they send you to hospitals and all these things for 1 year, and from there you can actually apply to the hospital training programs to get your master's degrees done. If, like me, you are coming from overseas and you apply for the master's, you're actually no different to anyone who is applying from overseas. You're still considered to be an international student. However, if you come to the UK, you work here for 5 years, you get your permanent residency or your citizenship, then you are eligible for, number one, reduced fees. Number two, many more master's seats are available for UK citizens. So if doing your master's is something you want to get done, that may be a long process. You may have to come work here for 5-6 years before you're able to apply. Nothing is stopping you from applying before you get your UK citizenship, but just that the application process is a lot more competitive, number one, and the actual course fees are a lot more expensive. For example, for a non-UK citizen, I think endo in Edinburgh costs about 36,000 per year, and that's a 2-year course, and that's in pounds. But if you are a local citizen, it costs about £9,000 a year. So there's actually a big difference in the amount of money you pay.
Okay, great. Yeah, that answers those questions. Another one is, would you consider teaching as a career in the future? I think it's like, can you become a teacher eventually in the UK if you want?
Yes, I could. If someone is willing to hire me to teach, I could teach now as well. Your work visa allows you to work part-time for 20 hours. So that would be considered as part-time work if you want. Of course, teaching, usually you need to be a specialist, just like back home. So if I'm able to get my specialty training done, then yes, I would definitely consider teaching. I do enjoy most of it. I enjoy interacting with people. So fingers crossed, that's something in the future for me.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for all your answers. I think we run out of time now. It's 5:02. I'll let Dr. Munir say a few words now.
Okay, thank you, Auleep. Before we end this session, I would like to record my thanks definitely to you. You took up time and to speak to us and share your thoughts and your ideas, and so far what you have done, and the whole process, which I think is an important thing for the students and the alumni to understand and to learn from you, like how the whole process is. I would also like to thank the IMU alumni support team for all the arrangement. So thank you everyone, and thank you Auleep again, and thank you Naveen.
My pleasure, absolutely no problem. Nice speaking to you again, Dr. Munir, and Dr. Naveen as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Auleep. Yeah, the alumni team's been very helpful, as you know. The last 2 days we've worked on this, and thank you, Dr. Munir, for moderating the talk. And I'm hopeful that most of the students who came in have gone back with so much knowledge. I wish I had somebody telling me all this when I was a student. So thank you very much, Auleep.
No worries at all. Absolutely my pleasure. Stay safe, guys. Stay at home, and hopefully we'll be able to overcome this.
Thank you, and I thank everybody for being part of this. And any other questions, I think Dr. Auleep will try and reply on the chat. There's only a few more questions. And if you have any more questions, please get onto his social media platforms and ask him there. He'll be happy to answer them for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.